Please welcome the co-founder of Aspiration.com and founder of Working Action Hero, Joe Sanberg.
How are you? It's so great to be here with people whose politics we all share and feel like we can all let our hair down being here together. I have an announcement that I'd like to make. I am not running for president of the United States. You never thought that saying those words would make you unique, but here we are in 2019. Now, I actually thought seriously about running for president because someone ought to run for president around the agenda of ending poverty. So over the course of the spring, with Working Hero Action, we held 31 different forums in Iowa and South Carolina with leading presidential candidates to talk about the question of poverty. Somewhere along the lines over the last couple of decades, have you noticed we've abandoned the definition of poverty to the statisticians? That poverty has become what the numbers say instead of how people are living. One of my favorite Dr. King quotes is about segregation, but it applies also to poverty, which is, segregation relegates people to the status of things. Similarly, when we define whether someone is poor by the mathematical amount of money they make instead of the emotional and lived experience of their daily life, we relegate them to the status of a thing. You can't tell me that someone who earns $10,000 above the poverty line but has no health care and wakes up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night wondering how she's going to take her kids to the doctor is middle class. Yet, over the past couple of decades, have you also noticed that all Democratic politicians talk about is the middle class? In fact, there are people who even told me, you can't use the word poverty. That's a bad word. And in that, people have gone around the country telling everyone they're middle class. You're only supposed to describe poverty of people who are really, really in the deepest state of despair. But is it dignifying to tell someone who has no health care, who's earning $47,000 a year with 2 kids, that she's middle class? I think that's insulting. I think that doesn't see the life that that person is living. Describing that person as part of America's poverty crisis isn't demeaning, it's honoring of the truth that she is living. When almost 8 out of 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck, there is no middle class. We have a poverty crisis in this country. You probably noticed that some members of the corporate establishment say that progressives don't have a coherent vision. And that's such bullshit. This is our vision. Our nation ought to be governed to end poverty. Our nation ought to be governed to end poverty. And here's what that means. First of all, it means we recognize that poverty is the lived experience of real people, that poverty is the nearly 8 out of 10 Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. Second of all, it understands that end poverty requires 2 really simple objectives. You have to make work pay a lot better by creating a minimum wage that's a living wage. Once we achieve 15, we need to go to 20 and 25. We have to massively expand the earned income tax credit. And then we have to make the things people have to buy every single day more affordable. And there's no bigger life's basic need that has to become more affordable than healthcare. And so part of ending poverty is we have to have Medicare for all. The third pillar of our governing agenda to end poverty is we have to get at the root causes of a system that treats some people differently than others. We have a poverty crisis because our system is infected with structural racism and structural misogyny. And until we change the rules and punish people who perpetrate prejudice with proportionate consequence, we won't end poverty and we won't end racism and misogyny. The next pillar of our agenda to end poverty has to be investing in jobs. Not random little initiatives here and there, but the kind of big investments in an industrial policy that we've done when America's produced the best paying jobs. And the obvious industrial investment we have to make is fixing our carbon economy and turning it into one that's carbon neutral. And that's why a Green New Deal is so important in our agenda to end poverty. And the last pillar is not a policy one, it's a culture change. The reason that all of us are going to be the ones who lead the charge to end poverty is because the charge is going to be led not by people in elected office, but by change makers in our community. You know, I think we rely on politicians too much. Politics is what flows from our culture. And if we're going to create a politics to end poverty, we have to create a culture that recognizes, speaks, writes, and shouts every single day, end poverty. To those who think it's crazy, we need to remind them of what Dr. King said in his Unfulfilled Dreams speech of March of '68. He said, "One of the great agonies of life is we are constantly trying to finish that which is unfinishable. We are commanded to do that. We are commanded as progressives to lead this nation to a governing agenda that ends poverty." You know, I first became interested in change making when I had my bar mitzvah. I'm a liberal Jew. I love being a liberal Jew. And when I was 13 years old, I read from the Torah for the first time. And I read this Torah portion called Shoftim. And it goes this way. It says, "Justice, justice shall you pursue." It doesn't say justice, justice shall you achieve. It says, "Justice, justice shall you pursue." Like Dr. King says, we are commanded to try and finish that which seems unfinishable. But we've stopped trying to end poverty. We've stopped saying we're going to end poverty. We've stopped writing that we're going to end poverty. Which is why right now, I want everyone to take out their phones. I want everyone to open Twitter. And as a community, as a movement, I want us to make the hashtag end poverty trend on Twitter. You know, I'm so passionate about this issue that sometimes I'll be looking on Twitter to see who's tweeting the hashtag end poverty. And you'd think that that hashtag would be as prominent as the hashtag #MeToo. Those are two of the most important hashtags in our moment. Yet, for some reason, people rarely tweet hashtag end poverty. That's going to change right now. Out of a middle class that's been turned into ashes from a monopoly economy, must rise a spirit that leads a movement to end poverty. And so my question is, will you rise right now? I want everyone to stand up. If we're going to end poverty, if we're going to do what seems unfinishable, it's going to be because the change makers in this room rise. And so I want to hear us together say, in a chant, end poverty, end poverty, end poverty, end poverty, end poverty. Louder. Say it for the people who are living paycheck to paycheck. Think about the people who don't have health care who are counting on you. End poverty. Thank you, Netroots. I'm counting on you to end poverty. Thank you very much.